Thanksgiving week session on gratitude and the science behind gratitude and why it's good for us, for our own well-being, to be grateful. And we have Dr. Magdalena Bak-Maier from London with us today in conversation with Mim Senft, who is our partner at the GW4W, which stands for Global Women for Wellbeing. So Better Spaces is super happy to have you guys here. And Mim, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Janera. First, for all of those in the U.S. that are celebrating Thanksgiving this week, happy, healthy, safe Thanksgiving to everyone. And as we move into this holiday season for a lot of us globally, this just seemed like such a perfect topic. So I went out and I said, well, what's the actual definition of gratitude? Like, what's out there? So just to kick us off, I wanted to share that. Gratitude is the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation for and to return kindness. So it seems like a lot of the things we could use right now. But we want to get into some of the practical things about the whys today. And so would love to start out talking about how does gratitude and a grateful mindset help us physically? Like what happens to our bodies when we incorporate this?
Well, I can tell you practically, I'm not a gratitude expert by any means. So I should disclose this, but I look at gratitude in conditions of burnout and burnout recovery. So I do, and in current context in my one-to-one practice, gratitude is a key practice in general. Right. So I'm certainly familiar with some of the literature and research about it. I'd probably say physiologically speaking, gratitude changes our brain. It actually creates far more resourceful brain activity actually in the cortical structures. And that's proven by MRI studies of different people, but it isn't always that gratitude works so well. So it's not true of everyone. So there's a caveat to that. And it also, I would say, from two other very useful perspectives, it helps with pain management. Which is actually, and that's really lovely work from UCLA around compassionate mindful therapies and the use of gratitude in pain management. And that is well evidenced. So I think, and holds true. And equally in quality of sleep. And of course, on a very practical level, it also is correlated physiologically with our kind of ability to feel calmer and have quite a lot of self-calm and high self-esteem if we practice gratitude. Because if we practice gratitude, we feel calmer, as in gratitude towards inanimate objects, towards general things. But if we practice gratitude towards other people, we actually build relationships. Yeah. And so we're giving people a gift that, it's gorgeous to be on the receiving side of gratitude. So anyone who pays you a compliment that's genuine or gives you a piece of acknowledgement or says a genuine thank you, it makes us feel good. I think and there's some research that says, of course, that by doing that, so one of the pieces of research I remember is a piece of research from a few years ago where people, it's quite a large study of about, I think, 500 participants, write letters of gratitude to people to say thank you. And, I think there's something in that, because I've recently done a similar kind of experiment with a small group of students. And I'm not sure how much the relief was in writing the letter as much as the person getting the letter. So I think there are two kind of components. Yes, you can write it out, but if no one gets to hear it, you might not actually feel better.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Well, I think it brings up too, when we talk about, the mental health perspective, and again, understanding that there is this mind-body connection, so that if our minds are calmer, our physiological bodies are calmer. And so that can actually impact us on the cellular level. There's all this discussion about, ongoing stress and how that causes this ongoing inflammation in the body. So this is just one of those like simple techniques that if practiced regularly actually does have a physiological impact. And and it seems like such a soft word, doesn't it? Gratitude, when we talk about this in the business case and achievers and get it done and do all these things, and yet the benefits of this, and I think particularly going into a very unusual holiday season for most of us, having these key things for us to connect to and put into practice so that we can protect our own health and well-being are going to be very important. So are there particular ways that you would recommend about, well, first, maybe we should take a step back. What are some of the barriers to having more gratitude in your life?
I think for the most part, what I see in client and programs is that similarly to mindfulness, it seems too simple and free. And it's undervalued for that very reason. We don't have to spend any money on it or very little. And yet, some of the best things we know when it comes to mental health are really not terribly expensive, or can be services and tools, and they have their place, beautiful place in well-being. But nonetheless, many things are also available to everyone without there being a cost, which in the current climate is really great to know and make use of. But it's about habits. It's a beautiful habit to have, but I can confess to you that flossing is apparently a good habit. I struggle to floss my teeth. So, I think we all have certain habits that we know are good for us. Drinking lots of water is a good habit. Try to convince my teenage, our teenage kid to drink enough water during the day. It's tough. So.
Interesting. So gratitude is like, water to the body, gratitude to the mind a little bit, and thinking about that in really practical terms, like how do we build this into our daily work life or daily personal life, I think is really, really key. I love this idea. You brought up, gratitude letters. I'm not sure that everybody understands what those are. So maybe it'd be great to share a little bit about what that means and what you would put in something like that.
Great question. And one of our most popular blogs on maketimecount.com is how to write thank you cards. And I guess in part because I'm a writer, I sort of thought I write cards to my friends. I'm known for it. That I tend to write old-fashioned traditional letters and cards. And one day I sort of thought people clearly struggle with this, so why not write a blog about how to write a card? To pose real questions, and not send someone one of those glib little cards that just says hello, greetings, that people tend to bin, but a card or a letter that you might want to treasure for a little longer. And so I'm surprised, but Kieran in our team says it's one of our most popular blogs. So it's a great question, and I would say. Your question was how to write it, yes?
Kind of what it is, like how, if you're going to sit down,
what
it is, how would you go about setting up a practice to do this? I think would be helpful.
Okay, right. I'll take it as two separate questions. So the first question, maybe in steps, will be to say, first of all, imagine the person you're going to write it to. So really clarify in your mind who it is and why they're getting this gift. Okay, because they really are getting a gift of acknowledgement, gratitude, admiration, thank you, or all these respect, inspiration, some sort of all these positive things that I think are part of all your positive psychology emotions that Barbara Fredrickson's in America really studies a lot under the big umbrella of love. That is like platonic love, isn't it? And you start to think about what are you giving this person? So what you're giving them is really the impact they have on you. So you're giving them your thoughts about them, your feelings about them, and a kind of honesty about how they impact you. So it is, in a way, a love letter. It's like when you would write a love letter to someone and say, listen, when you come into the room, I get all nervous and jitty because you're in the room. They say, oh, maybe I have a crush on you. So that's a love letter of a different kind. But in a sort of gratitude sphere, you know, you're writing to someone to really single them out. And I remember I am returning to this practice this year, and I have abandoned it for good 5-6 years in its real practice form, because you asked me what's the process. And so when I was an internal in an organization, every year, I guess it was part of maybe my American Thanksgiving-like celebration in a you know, British university. But I would think about 10 people, and perhaps 10 because 10 digits, or we always think of 10 skills, or, you know, there's a 10. They said 10 people that made a difference in my work life this year, or 10 people that really made my life easier or somehow better. You know, wherever they came from. And they could have been like the doorman who always smiled and it made my day so much better, or, you know, whoever. And I make the list, and then I'd go and find their email addresses, and I would write them an email and say, this, hello, so-and-so, you're getting this from me because this is the difference you've made for me this year. I just want to thank you. And I remember my coach, who's a wonderful, wonderful old soul, and who said to me one year, I love your practice, but why 10?
It doesn't have to be 10, right? I mean, but yeah.
He said, aren't there, what if there are 15? Do people get cut off your list? And in truth, the truth was that no, people didn't get cut off my list. I actually had a handful of people to thank. So it kind of pointed to two things. One is that we don't go out of our way to leave that kind of footprint in people's hearts and people's lives. And I think recently I came across a piece of, it was like an article, it's not really research, but it did talk about how very infrequently we are given thanks for good actions, and how often we are, you know, criticized when we do something wrong, even not intending to do so, if that makes sense.
100%. I've actually read some research that says for every negative piece of feedback, to counteract that, you have to give 4 pieces of positive feedback.
Yes.
There's some real neurological science around this. So again, it gets back to, like, if you're a leader or a team leader, or, you know, working, you know, just with your, you know, your coworkers, how much of an impact that can really have, and how people feel about being included and feeling valued in the organization. And as opposed to, we think it's 1-to-1, and it's not, it's 4-to-1. So
so I guess just to be clear for people who are listening, if you're thinking of a process, make your own cards, buy cards, do it on email, you know, do it in whatever format, make people videos, but find a way and a simple system to write down a series of people's names down that really made a difference. And the bigger the difference, the better. But what I mean by this, it's not that someone, you know, went way out on a limb to help you. Some of the differences, like, you know, there's only, I always think about our daily systems, because our daily systems are kind of personal and universal. But I'll give an example. I go to a coffee shop which has about 7 different apprentices, because it's a very large coffee shop, so they hire a lot of kids in between seasons. And there's only one person who really has great customer service. And if you are in front of this person, you will always feel better, plus get a cup of coffee. And so, you know, I did go out of my way to write to the 2 guys who run the shop to say to them, I don't know what, you know, what you do with the other people, but this is a really special experience, so try to share it. And the truth is that, you know, I think for this person it comes very genuinely, and it's just part of the way, you know, she is. But isn't it nice, and so nice when that happens, you know? So it can be anyone, and I encourage people to look really broadly across their different spheres of life and communities and friends and so on. And it's not really to kind of appeal to the ego side of our left brain achiever mind. Oh yes, I got, you know, an award from my friend for being the gold star sheriff of friendship. Not at all. It's really far more gentle and subtle, because it's the way you say it and what you say that makes the difference. Because the person has to connect in that and sort of really receive it and feel, wow, that's true. It's that it's really sacred. I mean, you know, gratitude comes from the word, Latin root is grace, and grace is spiritual. So to give real gratitude is an embodied experience. It's not just cognitive.
Well, and again, it gets back to, you know, incorporating some of these things in our working environments goes a long way to building trust between people and building in resilience. We don't realize how much gratitude, even through the darkest and toughest times, can get people through. And, you know, and it's hard if you're a leader and you're, you know, I mean, a million things to get done, and how are we going to rearrange work, and who's out, and, you know, and all these pieces. But I think you make a very strong point about this being a very practical work tool in, but in a spiritual sense. And it doesn't necessarily mean religious. We're just talking about that deeper human to human connection. And that I think there's even bleed over to diversity and inclusion in using gratitude, because, you know, how you pointed out, specific to that person, you know, I think is really key. I mean, I can tell you that I do have a drawer in my office, right where I'm sitting right now, where I've saved cards like that I've gotten from people over the years. And here's the long-term effect too, is that I really encourage people to save those things. You know, if you get an email, print it out and put it in a folder, because when you personally are getting down on yourself, pull those things out. Those people can reaffirm for you all the, you know, all the good that you do, all the best things in yourself. And that can be difficult, especially if you're feeling isolated or, you know, going through a rough experience. So it works in the short term, but I'd also, you know, just encourage people to have a little special folder of those things as they receive them.
Yeah, you know, there's a piece of, there's a model from one of my favorite teachers from, you know, Stanford, on self-efficacy, which is around confidence. And it really has just 4 factors, the first of which is your past attainment. And what you talk about is, if you're saving acknowledgements and gratitudes, you're building your historical record that you got them. And that's really important. And then the other is to be able to ask for them in the present. Because sometimes, and this often happens for alpha type of personalities, is that in a way your brain looks at your past but beats you with it. So if you were terribly good in the past, you suffer twice because you're now having this high expectation of having to be even better than you were. So the past doesn't necessarily help you. So I in my practice try to encourage people to flip that around, and to simply, if they're feeling like they're not getting enough gratitude, to really step up doing nice things for people so they can earn some, you know, because it's like flipping it around, you know, and actually sort of going, okay, let me go and get out of myself for a bit.
Yes. Well, there's some really good science around how that improves depression. And yeah, it's
Yes,
100%. Use some
exactly.
give some gratitude, get out of your own head, I think is really, really, really good advice. You know, a lot of offices do, or used to, when we were all together in many places, would do Secret Santa, secret gift giving. Wouldn't it be a really fun idea for people to do secret gratitude? I mean, I just think instead of
Yes,
handing
I
somebody
love
a
it.
gift,
Yeah.
like you get assigned, and then, you know, I mean, what a wonderful way to really honor everybody. You know, whether it's, you know, I mean, that's in a professional setting. And to date, I've never seen any organization do that, but we can't get together in many cases. So why not think about this as a way to um, reach out to everybody on the team?
Yeah. So what we did for Better Spaces actually last Friday, so a few days ago, we had a gratitude writing session. So we distributed a bunch of gratitude kits to our clients and convened on Zoom to write notes to the elderly, just because they are by themselves in these elderly homes. And so we don't know who the cards actually go to, but it was really nice to get together and to do something for someone else. And I had my child, and you know, he liked it, and then we got to write to the grandparents, and it just like triggered this whole cascade of good feelings. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I have a question, Magdalena, about what you just said before. It's like that gratitude is an embodiment and not cognitive. Can you go deeper into that? Because, you know, it's easy to remember and think, oh, I have to be grateful, and you're right. But like, there's a big difference between cognition and embodiment.
There is. So thank you for asking the question. What I mean by this is that, you know, if you sit on a, you know, so for example, I have a very short meditation practice, which I encourage with our grid practice, and it's built into our grids. And I say to people, sit for even a minute, close your eyes, and just really tune in and notice what you're grateful for. And the weirdest thing happens. People say, I am grateful for my difficult husband. I am actually grateful for that colleague at work that is irksome, but actually pushes my buttons and helps me realize that I can get angry. It's amazing, the sort of stuff that people open up to. And as soon as that happens, you create somatic gratitude, because this is not just cognition. This is connecting to your emotional centers, your muscles. And in fact, what happens is if you watch a person do it, I have watched it, you know, with some of my clients, if we've done it together, what you see is that people's tension, their muscle tension relaxes. Because what people hold in their body is the tension of the anger, the stress, the tightness, the deadlines, the kind of control. But when you start to go into gratitude, like, you know, it's almost like creative thinking. The first things you put out is usually the nonsense from the top of your head, the obvious. It's not your creative thinking. It's like the stuff you had to get rid of so you could start to dig deeper and really start to associate and wake up your brain. Same with gratitude. You begin to see that gratitude is like endless. And the things that we most often are actually kind of in a cognitive sense, creating as problems, are not problems. They are, you know, like Wayne Dyer said, they're spiritual solutions. You could think of it like that. So you could say, you know, because of your difficulty, I am becoming a better person. Thank you. Because you don't say thanks, I'm having to develop my grace. Thank you. Do you see what I mean? So, and this sort of gratitude cannot not move you. So you will get goosebumps, you will expand, you will emotionally grow. it's a really powerful practice.
Yes, but then it's not expressed, right? So I'm wondering whether you need to express gratitude. So this difficult, irksome colleague, you feel this gratitude because of, your expanded grace. Do you then need to tell him or her, like, I'm really grateful?
Not always, but I think, in therapy, we know that if a client only does cognitive work, their head work, they're not shifting. Their behavior is not going to shift. The shift comes from a somatic wave of like, I grow, I expand, something shifts in me. So, and when you read good writers write from a place of embodiment. They can tell you and create the same in you. It's not cognitive. In fact, my writing coach says I'm still too left brain writer. So I am bad. But does that help you? So, and you soften, and we know from a lot of institutes that look at around the world that look at presence, embodiment, the way people facilitate, the way people are in conflict with each other. Tension in one person puts other people into tension. We know it from animal studies. You can't hide it. So that way of, spiritual people really bring us calm. They settle the space. And they settle the space not because they have an idea of balance. They live balance. It's incredibly different.
Totally different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Truly, truly challenging. Well, I know we are almost at time, and so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom here. I would hope that people think about during this season of light in the darkness, and in the Northern Hemisphere, as I always like to call it, that we find ways to be a little bit more grateful and put more grace into our lives. And I love the idea of letters, whether it's 2 letters, 1 letter, 10 letters, how this can transform you and the people around you. So what a beautiful message as we're, going into this season. Thank you so much, Dr. Bak-Maier, for all your words of wisdom.